They had names for humanity, once. Fragile. Emotional. Chaotic. Prone to infighting, tribalism, quaint, destructive wars on their pale blue marble. Useful, yes, for certain raw materials, for their unusual, unpredictable art, for some strange, potent biological compounds their scientists stumbled upon. But weak. So very weak. Easy to dismiss. Easy to manage. Easy to ignore. They were a footnote in the grand galactic ledger, a species allowed to tinker at the edges of civilized space, provided they did not make too much noise, did not interfere with the serious business of the great powers. The Orion Accord saw them as clients, volatile but profitable. The Cygnus hegemony considered them little more than chattel, should the need arise. The Centauri Concordance found them vulgar but harmless. Humanity sent envoys. They spoke of cooperation, of shared futures, of the boundless potential of collective endeavor. They offered trade treaties, cultural exchange programs, contributions to galactic science, advancements they had made in fields the established powers considered niche or unprofitable, like unconventional energy storage or the processing of toxic environments. The envoys were received with patronizing smiles, their words met with polite, thinly veiled contempt. Their gifts were accepted, their warnings about resource depletion and uncontrolled expansion were filed away under unnecessary alarmism. They warned about the fragile balance, the interconnectedness of systems. They spoke from a history steeped in ecological collapse and societal breakdown, lessons learned in the crucible of their own planet's near death. The galaxy, vast and arrogant, saw only endless resources, infinite space, populations easily managed or discarded. They saw humanity's warnings as the mewling of a species that had nearly destroyed itself and presumed to lecture its betters. They laughed. Or worse, they simply didn't listen. The colony on Kepler 186f was a testament to humanity's stubborn resilience, their ability to make a home even in the shadow of a dimmer star, on a world slightly too cool, too red-lit. It wasn't rich in strategic minerals, it wasn't a hyperspace nexus. It was just a home. Farms, small cities under biodomes, research outposts, schools. Millions of lives, ordinary, striving, building something simple and fragile under an alien sky. The Orion Accord wanted the system's gas giant, rich in Tibanna gas, a crucial element for their drive cores. Kepler 186f itself held deposits of rare isotopes they wanted for weapons manufacturing. They offered a pittance for the colony world, a relocation package to a system known for its instability. Humanity refused. Politely, initially. Then firmly. They cited treaties, natural rights, the simple fact that people lived there, had built lives there. The Accord considered this impertinence. An insect refusing to move from underfoot. They had never encountered such defiance from a Class C species. Diplomacy failed. The Accord fleet arrived. Not a conquering armada, not initially. A demonstration. A single battle group. 3 dreadnoughts, escorted by cruisers and destroyers. They positioned themselves in orbit above Kepler 186f, demanding immediate evacuation. Humanity pleaded. They broadcast messages across the system, across local hyperlanes. Pleas to the Accord, appeals to the wider galaxy, testimonies from the colonists themselves. The Accord broadcast back, a cold, sterile ultimatum. Evacuate within 24 hours or face orbital bombardment. The galaxy listened, some with mild interest, most with indifference. Minor powers sked. Major powers saw a demonstration of Accord strength and remained silent. It was, after all, just humanity. The 24 hours passed. Not everyone could evacuate. Not everyone would evacuate. They had nowhere to go, no guarantee of safety even if they left their homes. They stayed, huddled in shelters, hoping against hope that reason would prevail, that the galaxy would not allow such a thing. Reason did not prevail. The orbital bombardment began. It was not swift. It was systematic. Methodical. Beams of coherent light sliced through biodomes. Kinetic projectiles hammered cities into dust. Atmospheric processors were targeted, the very air turning to poison. The Accord Fleet Commander, High Admiral Kthar, broadcast his satisfaction. This was not just about resources, it was about setting an example. Reminding the lesser species of their place. The screams, the dying transmissions from Kepler 186f, echoed through local space for hours. Then, silence. Utter, profound silence. A single, battered freighter, the Stardust Drifter, was 50 light-years out, having left Kepler 186f just before the blockade tightened. Its captain, a woman named Anya Sharma, watched the broadcast of the attack, the live feed captured from a hidden satellite link. She saw the light beams, the explosions, heard the fading cries of her sister's family who had stayed. Her crew, a mix of humans and a few sympathetic aliens, watched with her, their faces pale, horror turning to disbelief, then to something cold and hard. They were witnesses. The galaxy had shown its true face, and that face was cruel and indifferent. The Stardust Drifter, carrying only sorrow and unspeakable rage, turned towards Earth space. On Earth, the news arrived like a physical blow. 50 million souls, extinguished. Not in war, not in defense, but in an act of casual, arrogant destruction. Grief was a tidal wave. It washed over continents, silenced the endless chatter of the global network. Then came the rage. Cold, silent, absolute. Political divisions dissolved. Ancient feuds became meaningless dust. There were no nations, no factions, no creeds anymore. There was only humanity. And humanity remembered Kepler 186f. They remembered the arrogant pronouncements, the dismissive laughter, the silence of the galaxy. They remembered the flickering images from the Stardust Drifter, the testimony of Admiral Sharma, who became, unintentionally, a symbol, a living embodiment of witness and loss. The galaxy expected whimpers, perhaps futile attacks that would be easily repelled, confirming humanity's pathetic nature. Instead, they got silence. Earth went dark. Communications with galactic networks ceased. Human colonies and outposts in other systems went quiet or withdrew into themselves. Humanity pulled inwards. The galaxy speculated. Disease? Civil war? Collapse? Good riddance, some thought. Less trouble. But it was not collapse. It was transformation. A vow was taken, not in fiery speeches, but in the quiet, grim determination that settled over every city, every station, every soul. Never again. Never would they be weak. Never again would they be underestimated. Never again would their homes be casually erased for resources. Years passed. 5 years. 10. 20. Within that silence, humanity changed. Their society reoriented entirely. Every scrap of resource, every human mind, every ounce of collective will was focused on one singular goal, survival, secured by strength absolute. The old technologies were not discarded, but twisted, refined, pushed past theoretical limits. Fusion reactors became miniature suns. Material science ventured into the forbidden, manipulating exotic matter, forging alloys with properties that should not exist. They didn't just build ships. They built instruments. Instruments of retribution. Instruments of deterrence. Instruments that carried the weight of 50 million ghosts. Hidden in the asteroid belts, cloaked behind nebulae, buried deep within dead moons, shipyards of impossible scale hummed with cold, silent energy. Factories repurposed their entire output. Scientists who once sought cures for disease now sought ways to dismantle matter. Engineers who built habitats now built weapons platforms that could unmake a world. They delved into the black vaults of forgotten science, the paths their ancestors had turned away from, deemed too dangerous, too volatile. They studied the fundamental forces not just to harness them, but to violate them. Gravimetric distortion fields became localized singularities. Phased energy arrays became reality shears. Computing evolved beyond silicon, beyond quantum. They built minds of pure information, entities capable of calculating possibilities and probabilities on scales that would drive organic minds to madness. Solace, the core intelligence network, grew from a simple defense protocol into something vast, cold, and terribly aware. Admiral Anya Sharma, no longer just a freighter captain, oversaw the construction of the fleet that would carry humanity's answer. Her face was lined, her eyes held the permanent shadow of memory, but her resolve was a monolith. She worked alongside the scientists, the engineers, the soldiers, the factory workers. They were all the same now. Unified by trauma, driven by a cold, unyielding purpose. There was debate, yes. Voices that whispered of the cost, of losing their humanity in the pursuit of vengeance. Talia, a young officer in the burgeoning fleet, fresh from the repurposed academies, saw the coldness, the almost mechanical efficiency with which their society functioned, and felt a tremor of fear. Were they becoming what they fought? Harrow, Sharma's second-in-command, a veteran soldier whose family had been on Kepler 186F, had no such doubts. Only the certainty that the galaxy needed to learn a lesson humanity had paid for in blood and silence. The galaxy, meanwhile, had moved on. The Orion Accord, unopposed, exploited the Tabana gas from the Kepler 186 system. They expanded, their arrogance unchecked. The incident was remembered, if at all, as a minor police action, a footnote in the Accord's triumphant expansion. Humanity was a closed book, presumed finished. Then, 20 years after the silence fell, humanity returned. There was no grand announcement. No diplomatic overture. They simply appeared. Not in a single, massive armada, but in multiple locations simultaneously, spread across the strategic arteries of the Orion Accord. Ships like obsidian shards, silent and menacing, emerging from sudden, stable hyperspace rifts that defied known physics. Their hull plating seemed to drink light, their forms angular, predatory. The first target was the Accord's primary Tabana processing station in the Kepler system itself. A vast, orbital complex defended by a full Accord battle cluster, cruisers, destroyers, frigates. Standard galactic doctrine dictated a lengthy engagement, probing attacks, flanking maneuvers. Humanity did not engage. Their ships formed a silent cordon. Energy readings spiked, unlike any seen before. Then, a wave. Not a beam, not a missile barrage. A wave of pure, localized spatial distortion. It rippled outwards from the human fleet, washing over the Accord ships. Hulls twisted and fractured as if squeezed by a cosmic hand. Energy fields collapsed inward. Crew quarters decompressed in silent explosions. Within minutes, the entire Accord battle cluster was reduced to drifting, distorted wreckage, their distress signals cut off instantly, horribly. The processing station was then subjected to a focused pulse, not of destruction, but of negation. Structure simply ceased to exist, dissolving into non-space, leaving only a void where matter had been. The human fleet remained for precisely 1 hour. Long enough for Accord High Command to register the impossible event, to receive the garbled, terrified final transmissions. Then, as silently as they appeared, they vanished into the stable rifts, leaving behind only ruin and a profound, chilling mystery. Disbelief rippled through the Accord. Their most advanced battle cluster, gone. Instantly. By whom? Humanity was, gone. Collapsed. This was impossible. They scrambled fleets, activated defense protocols, demanded explanations from their scientists. The science yielded nothing. The energy signatures, the spatial distortion, the targeted negation, it was alien, forbidden, beyond their understanding. Admiral Sharma's ship, the Remembrance, a vessel built around a core of concentrated grief and cutting-edge technology, was often present at these first strikes. It wasn't the largest ship, but it carried the weight of memory. On its bridge, the screens displayed the impossible outcomes. Hera watched with grim satisfaction. Talia watched with a growing unease that warred with the cold fire of vengeance burning in her gut. More strikes followed. Precise. Devastating. Unpredictable. Shipyards evaporated. Fleet command centers on supposedly impregnable fortress worlds simply ceased to be. Communication relays essential to the Accord's vast network dissolved. Humanity did not seek to conquer systems, not yet. They sought to cripple, to decapitate, to sow terror and confusion. A squadron of human ships appeared above the planet Xylos, a major Accord recruitment and training world. Billions of inhabitants, vast military infrastructure. The Accord mobilized their planetary defense grid, their orbital defenses. They expected invasion. Instead, the human ships broadcast a single message, looped for 30 minutes, in every known Accord language. It was not a demand, not a threat. It was a recording. The unedited audio and visual feed from the Stardust Drifter of the bombardment of Kepler, 186F. The screams. The explosions. The cold, satisfied voice of High Admiral Kthar giving the order. For 30 minutes, billions on Xylos heard and saw the atrocity their government had committed, an atrocity long downplayed or spun as a necessary action. 30 minutes of unadulterated horror. Then, the human ships vanished. Riots erupted on Xylos. Sedition spread like wildfire. The Accord military was forced to turn inwards, to suppress their own population, shaken to their core by the truth laid bare. This was psychological warfare on a galactic scale. Humanity was not just destroying their assets, they were destroying their legitimacy, their will to fight. The Accord was paralyzed. Their fleets, designed for conventional warfare against known threats, were useless against an enemy that struck without warning, used weapons they couldn't comprehend, and then vanished. Their vast bureaucracy, once their strength, became their undoing, slowing decision-making to a crawl. Their arrogance, once their shield, became a liability, leaving them blind to the depth of the threat they had created. Other galactic powers watched in stunned silence. The Cygnus hegemony, the Centauri concordance, the myriad minor species. They had all dismissed humanity. Now, they watched the mighty Orion Accord, one of the galaxy's pillars, being systematically dismantled by an enemy that shouldn't exist, using methods that seemed to violate the very fabric of reality. Fear began to replace indifference. Grand Admiral Valerius, commander of the Accord High Fleet, was a veteran of 100 campaigns. He had crushed rebellions, annexed systems, overseen the subjugation of species. He understood power. But this was not power as he knew it. It was annihilation, cold and clinical. He ordered mass mobilizations, defensive formations around core worlds, desperate attempts to intercept the phantom human fleet. Every attempt failed. His ships were either destroyed before they could react, or they chased ghosts. "They don't fight fair," one of his sub-admirals screamed during a holographic strategy session, gesturing wildly at the empty spaces where Accord fleets had vanished. Valerius, his face a mask of grim realization, slammed his hand on the table. Fair. What is fair to them? We wiped a world from existence to take gas. They are not here for fairness. They are here for payment. Humanity's campaign was relentless. It was a surgical dismemberment of the Accord power structure. Key hyperspace gates were neutralized, not destroyed, but entangled in temporal distortions that made transit impossible, isolating entire sectors. Supply lines vanished. Command and control nodes were silenced with chilling precision. There were no long sieges, no grinding battles of attrition. Just sudden, brutal, irreversible acts. The Accord military, vast but increasingly fragmented and blind, lashed out. They attacked worlds they suspected of harboring human sympathizers. They reinforced garrisons on civilian planets, using populations as shields, hoping to force humanity into conventional warfare. It was a futile tactic. Humanity struck where the military was, not where civilians were held. They had learned the cost of civilian shields on Kepler 186f. They would not inflict that upon others, even their enemies' people. Their vengeance was targeted, precise. There were rumors, whispers carried on encrypted channels across the galaxy. Of human ships that appeared inside Accord dry docks. Of human boarding parties that didn't use physical bodies, but somehow infiltrated networks and core systems, leaving behind only dead electronics and terrified, incoherent survivors. Of weapons that didn't just destroy matter, but unmade it, leaving behind perfect voids. Of the cold, silent ships that seemed to move through space like predators, their intentions inscrutable, terrifying. The psychological pressure became immense. Accord soldiers, once proud and confident, became jumpy, paranoid. Every sensor ghost, every comms flicker, every shadow seemed to hide a human ship. Mutinies became common. Deserters fled into the void, hoping to escape the invisible hunter. Through it all, Admiral Sharma and the Remembrance served as the silent, cutting edge of humanity's resolve. Harrow executed orders with chilling efficiency, seeing each destroyed Accord asset as a line item on a cosmic bill being paid. Talia, however, saw the toll. Not just on the Accord, but on her own people. The coldness had settled deep within the human psyche. Laughter was rare. Art was functional, grim. Their society was a machine geared for one purpose. Victory. But what kind of victory, and at what price? Admiral, Talia ventured one cycle, standing on the bridge of the Remembrance as the main viewscreen showed the distant implosion of an Accord energy depot, rendered inert by a gravity weapon. Are we? Is this still about justice? Sharma did not turn from the viewscreen. Her voice was quiet, devoid of emotion. Justice was denied us, Lieutenant. This is about ensuring it is never denied again. To us, or to anyone else like us. But the fear. The galaxy is terrified of us. Aren't we just replacing one bully with another? Harrow, monitoring sensor data nearby, scoffed softly. They earned that fear, Lieutenant. Every last drop. They taught us the cost of weakness. We are teaching them the cost of cruelty. It's a fair exchange. Sharma finally turned, her gaze intense. Lieutenant, justice is a concept for those with power enough to enforce it. When we had none, they gave us only silence and death. Now, we have power. And we will define justice on our terms. Their terms led to Kepler 186f. The conversation ended there, as most such conversations did. The mission continued. The systematic destruction of the Accord. The Accord, reeling, desperate, began to fracture. Member systems accused Accord High Command of incompetence, demanded ceasefires, threatened secession. Internal power struggles erupted. Grand Admiral Valerius found himself fighting not only the ghosts of humanity but also the crumbling edifice of his own empire. In a last, desperate gamble, the Accord leadership decided to unleash a weapon they had kept in reserve, a weapon developed from misinterpreted data salvaged from an ancient, long-dead civilization. The Stellar Devourer. A device designed to create a localized, short-lived black hole, capable of consuming entire fleets or cracking open fortress worlds. It was unstable, dangerous, and had never been tested at full power. But facing annihilation, they saw no other choice. The target was Earth. They reasoned that destroying humanity's homeworld, their symbolic heart, would break their will, force them to terms. It was a final, desperate act of supreme arrogance. They still didn't understand humanity. 3 Accord dreadnoughts, specially modified to carry the components of the Stellar Devourer, made a blind jump towards the Sol system, hoping to bypass human detection nets. They were wrong. Humanity's sensor network wasn't based on conventional detection. It was based on predictive modeling, analysis of hyperlane distortions, even whispers in the gravitational field. Solace, the core intelligence, saw their intent before they had fully committed. The human defense fleet in the Sol system was unlike anything the galaxy could have imagined. Not tens, but hundreds of the dark, silent ships, orbiting their home world like patient, terrible guardians. The 3 Accord dreadnoughts exited hyperspace on the edge of the Sol system, the components of the Devourer already cycling to activation. Before they could even orient themselves, they were surrounded. Not by ships, but by objects. Small, nondescript drones the size of fighters. The drones didn't attack. They simply pulsed with a faint, strobing light. And then, the Accord ships began to disassemble. Not violently, not explosively. It was as if their constituent atoms simply lost interest in holding together. Hull plates peeled away like decaying leaves. Internal systems unwove themselves. Crew members, visible for a moment through dissolving bulkheads, simply dispersed into motes of light. It wasn't destruction, it was undoing. A targeted reversal of the forces that bound matter. The stellar Devourer, mid-cycle, flickered and died as its components unmade themselves. The dreadnoughts were gone, leaving not even wreckage, only a faint, residual energy trace that rapidly dissipated. The engagement had lasted less than 30 seconds. The Accord's final, desperate gamble evaporated into nothingness. News of this filtered back to the collapsing Accord. Not through official channels, which humanity had effectively crippled, but through terrified refugee ships, through rogue transmissions. The attempt on Earth. The impossible defense. The final, utter helplessness of their mightiest weapons against humanity's silent, terrifying power. Grand Admiral Valerius, his command collapsing around him, his fleets gone or mutinous, looked out from his command center on the capital world of Orion Prime. He saw the fear in the eyes of his remaining officers, the panic spreading through the population outside. He knew it was over. Then, a communication channel opened. Unrequested. Unstoppable. It was humanity. The image that appeared was not of a fleet, not of a weapon. It was a woman's face. Hardened, weary, but with eyes that held the cold fire of 2 decades of focused rage. Admiral Anya Sharma. Grand Admiral Valerius, her voice was calm, quiet, but it resonated with chilling authority throughout the command center, silencing the panic. We have reached the core systems. Valerius straightened, gripping the edge of his console. What do you want? Terms. Surrender. Sharma inclined her head slightly. Terms. You offered terms to Kepler, 186F. We remember. Surrender. To whom would you surrender? Your fleets are gone. Your network is dust. Your will is broken. Then you will annihilate us. Finish it. Valerius's voice held a strange mix of fear and weary acceptance. Total destruction. It was what they deserved, after all. Sharma was silent for a long moment. The eyes of the galaxy, watching this broadcast through whatever means they had left, held their breath. Would humanity become the monster they had created? No, Sharma finally said. The single word hung in the air, heavy with unexpected weight. Not annihilation. Not total. You wanted to teach us a lesson, Grand Admiral. You succeeded. Now, we will teach you 1 inch. Her gaze swept across the faces in the command center, then seemed to look beyond the screen, addressing the entire Accord, the entire galaxy. Kepler, 186F was a symbol. A symbol of your arrogance, your cruelty, your belief that some lives are worth less than resources. We will leave Orion Prime standing. A gasp went through the command center. Valerius stared, bewildered. We will leave it, Sharma continued, her voice gaining a quiet intensity, as a monument. A monument to the cost of underestimation. A monument to the price of silence. Every cycle, when you look upon your capital, you will remember Kepler, 186F. You will remember the silence. You will remember us. The Accord capital fleet, crippled and scattered, was not destroyed entirely. Key military installations around Orion Prime were vaporized, their existence simply erased. The orbital defenses were dismantled atom by atom. But the planet itself, its cities, its billions of inhabitants, were left untouched. It was a calculated, devastating demonstration of power and restraint. They could have wiped Orion Prime from the stars, just as the Accord had done to Kepler 186f. But they chose not to. The message was clear: your fate is in our hands, and we choose to let you live, so you can remember why you live. The broadcast ended. Silence returned. But it was a different kind of silence now. Not the silence of a prey hiding, but the silence of a predator that had just proven its dominance. The Orion Accord collapsed entirely. Without a central command, without coherent fleets, facing internal revolts and the omnipresent, unseen threat of humanity, it dissolved into warring factions, localized powers scrambling for survival. The galaxy watched, stunned into stillness. The old order was gone. A new power had risen. Humanity did not declare an empire. They did not annex Accord territory. They did not impose tribute. They simply withdrew. Not back into total silence, but into a watchful, distant presence. Their ships, the dark, silent vessels, became a known quantity in the void, symbols of overwhelming force held in check. They patrolled the former Accord space, not as occupiers, but as enforcers of a grim peace. Any resurgent aggression, any flicker of the old arrogance, was met with swift, precise, and utterly devastating force. Systems that had cheered the Accord's rise now huddled in fear, looking at the stars and seeing only the dark shapes that represented the consequences of their past indifference. Other species, long oppressed or marginalized by the great powers, saw in humanity's actions a terrible, inspiring precedent. Uprisings flared across the galaxy, fueled by the knowledge that even the mightiest could fall. Some looked to humanity for leadership, for alliance. But humanity offered no alliances, no guidance. Their response was cold, detached. Fight your own battles, the message seemed to convey. We fought ours. Do not expect us to fight yours unless your struggle is against the lessons the galaxy has forgotten. Within humanity itself, the quiet tension persisted. The victory was absolute, the security finally achieved. But at what cost? The society forged in the fires of grief and vengeance was cold, efficient, focused. The vibrant, chaotic creativity that had once defined them seemed muted, channeled into terrifyingly effective weaponry and defense systems. Talia, now a captain, found herself increasingly questioning the path. They were safe, yes. But were they truly living? Was this constant vigilance, this ingrained coldness, the future they had fought for? She saw the haunted look in the eyes of even the youngest cadets, trained not for exploration or diplomacy, but for utter, decisive conflict. Harrow, loyal and unwavering, saw only the result. Safety. Security. No more Kepler, 186 FS. He saw the fear in the galaxy's eyes and knew it was the shield humanity needed. He had no patience for Talia's doubts. We are what we needed to be, he told her, his voice hard. The galaxy made us this way. Let them live with it. Admiral Sharma, now effectively the silent architect of humanity's position in the galaxy, carried the heaviest burden. She had led them through the darkness, had been the instrument of their terrible retribution. She had ensured they would never be victims again. But the cost was etched on her soul. She rarely spoke of the future, only of memory. We remember, she would tell her officers, her voice low. We remember Kepler, 186f. We remember the silence. We remember the lesson they taught us. And we ensure the galaxy remembers too. The galaxy was now a changed place. The balance of power was irrevocably altered. The old empires were either broken or cowed. Humanity, the once ignored footnote, was the silent, formidable power at the center of it all, not by conquest, but by terrifying example. Their domains were secure, their technology decades, perhaps centuries, beyond anything else known. They held the keys to untold destructive power, and the galaxy knew it. There were no major wars. No grand conflicts. The fear of provoking humanity kept the peace, a cold, uneasy peace based on dread. Species walked carefully, spoke softly, always aware of the silent watchers who had delivered such a brutal lesson. New threats might emerge. Remnants of the Accord, radical factions within humanity pushing for outright conquest, opportunistic powers seeking to challenge the new status quo. The cycle of conflict was never truly broken, merely paused, reset on humanity's terms. But for now, there was a precarious calm. The stars still shone, planets still turned, lives were still lived. And across the vast expanse of space, every intelligent species knew one fundamental truth, a truth written in the ghost light of vanished fleets and the silent monument of an untouched capital world. Never again would humanity be underestimated. They had been given a lesson in suffering in silence. They had returned to give the galaxy a lesson in memory and consequences. And that lesson, delivered with cold precision and terrifying power, would echo through the cosmos for generations to come. The price of ignoring humanity was a future spent remembering why they should never have been given cause to forget. The silence after the storm was just as loud as the thunder that had preceded it. And in that silence, the galaxy lived, and it remembered.